Thank you. I'm so excited to have the privilege to share with the Positive Prime community. My name is Betty Norlin, and I have a best-selling book on Amazon that is available worldwide, so that's pretty exciting. And I published that several years ago, and it's called Our Bodies, the Optimal Design. And I wrote this book from my own personal experience. And my purpose today is to really share with you just how amazing our bodies are. And I really hope that you can walk away with some new knowledge, some new inspiration, some new hope. I've got a workbook that goes with this program. I've got my book, and then I also do trainings and keynotes to help people to really learn and be able to apply these concepts. And so with that, what I wanted to share is, where did this even come from? Like, why did this start? And so I believe our bodies are the optimal design. I believe there is an intelligent design in our bodies that most of us are very unaware of. And I discovered it quite by accident many years ago, probably 30 or 40 years ago. I went through something called chronic fatigue syndrome, or Epstein-Barr virus. And it was basically a virus that affected my immune system. And the doctor said to me, we really can't help you. Just rest, take care of your body, and let it run its course. And up until that time in my life, I always believed, you get sick, the doctors will fix you. And then all of a sudden, that wasn't my story anymore. And so I felt, I'm going to call it the voice of God. You can call it whatever you want, the universe, your angels, whatever. But I felt like I got the voice of God or the Holy Spirit, and it probably told me three things during that experience, which took me about 3 years to recover from. And one was to rebuild my immune system naturally. And so many pieces of information came into me during those 3 years, and I've continued to study that over these last 30 or 40 years. And then it also gave me a direction of somebody to work with that was very helpful. It gave me a direction of certain products to use to rebuild my immune system that were natural products. And I just felt really honored. And so I think that sometimes when we are faced with a disease or an illness, we can respond in one of two ways. We can respond with fear, we can respond losing hope, or we can respond with hope, and we can respond with courage, and we can respond with faith. And either way, I believe that going through an illness that can knock us upside down can change our life tremendously, for the better or for the worst. And so that's a little bit about how my story started, how this book came to be. It took me many years before I got the book written. And so now what I'd like to do is I would like to go into some areas. So I'm going to do some screen shares with you guys. And the first one that I want to do, if I can do this here, I think I've got it all open.
Thank you, Betty. That's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And isn't it interesting? I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but at the same time, I love that you're grateful for it. And it is true. Often we don't really have the compassion necessary for other people going through unexplained chronic illnesses and autoimmune diseases, because we have no reference for it. And those of us who end up really leading others through those crises can do so because we've actually got some personal experience. And we know actually that there's a lot of mental and emotional pain that comes, not just the physical manifestation.
I really agree. And it's funny because when people would see me, I would look fine, but my fatigue was so extreme that at the worst case, I was in bed 20 hours a day, too weak to move. And it would take everything in me to get up out of bed, walk across the hall, take a shower, and I was spent for the day. So it is something that I looked fine on the outside. I think that they've related it, or I've related it to things like adrenaline fatigue, different autoimmune diseases. But I think, to me, the bottom line is, what are we doing to rebuild the internal environment within our own bodies so that we can have the best opportunity to build healthy cells and to let the unhealthy cells know they're no longer welcome and they can exit. And so those are some of the things that I teach and I help people to understand. So the first thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to share that I really teach about ancient wisdom and how do we apply it in our modern day, our modern application. And so did you know that when you take the edge of your, between your two knuckles on your finger, that actually measures 1 inch? Did you know that your fingertip actually measures 1 centimeter? And if you take your fingertip and you measure from the knuckle, like kind of by the palm of your hand to your first knuckle, it will be 5 different fingertips. So it's a measurement of 5 centimeters or 5 fingertips. And then if you measure from that first knuckle to the next knuckle, it's 3 fingertips. So there's a ratio of 5 to 3 here in our bodies. Again, ancient wisdom. But why is that significant? Well, let's take your knuckle that measures 1 inch and put it to the top of your forehead. And I'd like you to measure from the top of your forehead to the bottom of your nose. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's roughly 5 inches. Now measure from the bottom of your nose to the bottom of your chin, 1, 2, 3. So again, that ratio is 5 to 3. And what's really interesting is Leonardo da Vinci made this famous. He didn't discover it, but he made it famous in his artwork. And one of his pieces of art, the Vitruvian Man, I should be able to say that better, is a really beautiful and wonderful example of this 5 to 3 ratio. And it's called the golden ratio, and it's called divine proportion. And it's basically 5 to 3, or technically 1 to 1.618. And it's known in the math world and the science world as PHI. So that's the golden ratio. We see it in nature. We see it in our bodies. If you think about, sometimes some of the leaves have this golden ratio. You think about seashells and the conch shells, and there's a spiral, and that's also golden ratio. And so that was something that really fascinated me. And so the next thing I want to take us into is, okay, so that's interesting. So we've got this divine proportion in our bodies, and my whole focus is that our bodies are of an optimal design. We have a new understanding of these miraculous bodies that we've been carrying around for years, and we just don't know very much about them sometimes. So now if we look at ancient wisdom, we go back 5,000 years, 3,000 years before Christ in Egypt, and they measured using something called a cubit. And a cubit is if you take the palm of your hand and you put your 4 fingers there, your palm is about 4 fingers. And that, if we take a palm, 6 palms are what's called a cubit. And we measure the body in cubits. And you can look at a lot of Leonardo da Vinci's programs, and in my longer programs, I get more into it. But it's very interesting because that's mentioned in the Bible. And then we've shifted into meters and inches and yards, depending on where we live in the world. But that's been a way to measure for many, many, many years. Another thing I learned that was way fun is, did you know that and this was on one of the movies I saw, that the bottom of your foot actually measures like from the inside of your elbow to the edge of your wrist. So your foot is about that far in distance. And so I found a lot of these things super fascinating. And as I finally started writing the book 15 or 20 years later than what God had told me to write this book, it took me a long time, I started learning new things. So the next thing that I'd like to do, I'm going to stop sharing this document, and I'm going to share a PowerPoint that'll tell us more about some of the information that, again, I find so absolutely fascinating. So let's see if we can make this happen here. And so our body's the optimal design really teaches us to tap into your internal GPS, to tap into the natural healing power that you already have within your own body. And when I teach this in classes, I've got a workbook that goes along with it and a lot of interactive participation. And let's see. Okay, it was working before. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to read something from my book right now that really to me is kind of the premise of what I teach. A secret plan, a secret weapon. We have it already. We own it already. We've built our house around it. We've built our life around it. And now I'm going to introduce you to an amazing gift you already own, your own body. And so I'm going to share a few stories, but first, let's talk about the eyes. Can the eyes reveal any information to you about your own health? I never would have thought so until, quite by accident, I picked up a book at the vitamin store when I was going through my chronic fatigue. Is there a pattern of some type that's in the eyes? And if so, what is it? And so when we look here, I'm going to, for those of you that are watching, and if you're just listening, then you can kind of hear it and visualize in your mind. But you can actually look at your eyes, and I think I can annotate this. If not, then I'll just explain it. Whoops. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to show you that we can draw a circle around the eye, and think of it as a clock. And the top of the eye is 12 o'clock, and the bottom of the eye is 6 p.m. And over to, see if I'm doing this one right. So my liver's to the right. I don't know if this is reversed or not. If it should be, then I'll fix it the next time I present. But we'll go with the concept for now. Where did my cursor go? I've lost my cursor, so we'll just roll with it. So when you look at the top of your eye, the 12 o'clock represents the brain. So the brain's in the top of our head, and I found that pretty fascinating. When you go down to the 6 o'clock version, that's more like our kind of our gut, where our legs and the rest of our body kind of match, and so that's more the bottom of the body. When you go to, for instance, my liver, if I'm remembering this right, is on the right side of my body. So the liver will only appear in the right eye. It will not appear in the left eye. And so you can basically take a clock around your eye, and that's going to relate to the different things that are going on in your body in a clockwise rotation. The other thing I found really interesting is that there's 7 rings from the pupil to the iris. The outside ring represents the skin. Well, the skin's the outside of our body, so that was pretty fascinating. The 3rd ring from the pupil represents the colon. And when I went through my own illness, what I discovered is that I knew I was pretty constipated, but when I picked this book up and I started reading it, that particular part of the ring in my eye was very dark, and that represented constipation. And as my body started moving better and was working, then the darkness went away, and it wasn't as clogged, or it wasn't as dark, or it wasn't as stiff. So that 3rd ring started opening up. And also, if there's pockets in the colon, you might see pockets that come off of that 3rd ring in your eye. And so this study of the eyes is called iridology. In Europe, you have to be a medical doctor to be able to practice iridology. And I actually had the opportunity to meet the grandson of the man that is considered the father of iridology, Dr. Bernard Jensen. And I've done some work with his grandson, and it's been really fascinating. And then if we go to the next area that I'm going to show you, let's see. For some reason, I tested this all before, and it's playing hardball with me right now. So I'm just going to talk, and I'm going to keep playing with this to see if I can figure this out. The next area that I'm going to share with you are the feet. So on your feet, if you think about the bottoms of your feet and you think about your big toes, you can actually draw a picture of your head where your big toes are at. And that represents your big toes represent your brain. And then as you go along your toes, this is kind of the top of the ball of the foot, your shoulders are out here on your feet. And if you look at, if these are my feet per se, you've got your brain up here, this is your chest area here, then your stomach area, then your gut area down here. And so, and then on the inside of your feet is your spine. And what was really interesting to me is there was a lady, Louise Hayes, that was a nurse, and she was a nurse in World War II. And what she shared is that she was a nurse where the gentlemen that were in the war were in body casts, and the casts went from their armpits all the way to their feet. So basically only their toes were exposed, and the cast went up to here. So all that was showing was the toes. And she and the nurses in her unit would go ahead and would rub the guy's toes. And they would get better faster, and they would get better more than guys in the same condition in another unit. And years later, what she discovered is that reflexology, the immune system, is between the big toe and the next toe, right where the toes come together. And so by just rubbing that on the feet, that was stimulating the immune system without them knowing it or without them realizing it. Kim, I don't know if you're able to stop my, wait, now my cursor's playing. Okay.
Hello, sweetie. Try just pressing escape. Oh. There you go.
I did try that. It was not playing nice with me. So I'm going to try to share again and get back into this. I don't know why it was playing mean with me, but it was. Okay. Stop the share. Oh, I need to get out of annotate. Maybe that's it.
I'd say so.
Okay. Let's see. There we go. I think this will do the trick. If not, okay, there we go. And so I've talked about the feet, and I think it's just really amazing because, again, the order of our feet from the top to the bottom match our bodies from top to bottom. So ears are another thing, but ears are upside down, which is really interesting. And so at the bottom of your ear, that corresponds with your brain. And as you go up the ear, this corresponds more with your buttocks. And I've actually got a friend, a cousin, that has worked with people with addictions, and they use the ear reflexology and hit a certain part of the ear to help people overcome addictions. So I thought that was really interesting. So there's so much to me that our bodies tell us if we only knew how to read it, and we only knew how to listen, and we only knew how to talk about it. The next area that I want to move into that I found very fascinating, and this was a question that kept running through my mind, is, okay, so I know about nerve endings in America, Western medicine, that makes sense. I've heard a lot about meridians. I've heard a lot about chakras. I continue to learn more about them every day, but is there a connection between these three systems? And I kept asking that question and asking that question. And I came across this quote from Dr. Don Glassy. And he says, life energy in the form of cerebrospinal fluid flows within, through, and around the body over three interrelated and interconnected energy systems, and they interface with each other. So these three energy systems are, from a gross to a subtler and more refined level, the nervous system, which we know about in Western medicine, the meridian, and the chakra system. The other thing, and this ties a lot into positive prime and what we're doing with trying to really help people to understand how attitude plays into the healing power within the body. So the question I have is, what does your body tell you? But now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it and we're going to say, what can you tell your body? Like, are your questions designed for life energy, or are they designed for death energy or dead energy? And I'll share two stories. I think I shared them both in my book. One is a friend of mine, his name is Chuck, and he overcame stage 4 melanoma. And I remember him playing. He's a musician. He's amazing. He's one of the best trumpeteers I've ever heard. And he was playing at one of our household parties. We had him for every year. And he was singing It's a Good Life. And we're all looking at him, and he's looking at us, and we all know this is the end of the journey. He's not going to be around much longer. He's not going to be around next year. And somehow he's still around this 10, 15 years later. He's overcome the stage 4 cancer that had spread to his pancreas, his liver, and his brain. And he shared that it's really all about attitude. And he used both traditional and alternative methods. And one of the things he suggests is to teach people how to talk to you. And one of the things that really made a difference to me when I was talking to him is, you're not battling a disease, because then it's a win-lose proposition. So you're making it your friend, you're working alongside it, you're helping it to become comfortable in leaving. The second health issue that I went through was 3 or 4 years ago, and I went through breast cancer, and I had it in both breasts. And what I learned is to talk to it. So I just said, thank you so much for showing up. What are you here to teach me? What do I need to know so you're comfortable leaving? So I made it my friend and my ally instead of this deep, dark disease that I was afraid of. And I decided to just deal with it with love, joy, laughter, and play. And whatever was going to happen was going to happen. But I think because I had that attitude, I was able to approach it with faith instead of fear, and it helped so very much. And then my dad also was diagnosed with colon cancer at 78. He overcame it, and he was diagnosed again at 88. And the doctors told us he had about 2 months to live. And 18 months later, he was still with us. And I remember the conversation with him. He knew Chuck's story. And he's like, the doctors tell me I got cancer. I'm like, okay, what do you think about that? He's like, well, they tell me it's terminal. I was like, okay, what do you think about that? I was like, Dad, life's terminal. None of us get out of it alive. He's like, yeah, I guess that's right. And so when his attitude shifted, even though there were tough times during this journey, he was able to really roll with it and have good quality of life. And so attitude is so important. And I want to ask, are you a half full or a half empty type of person? And every day we should be thinking about what are we grateful for? And I had an abundance coach a few years back that shared with me something I never thought about before. And what he shared is, do we realize how abundant this earth is? Like, how many leaves do we really need? You look outside, there's so many leaves. We don't need that many. How many blades of grass do we really need? It goes on and on and on and on. There's so much grass out there. Is how many birds do we really need? You can look around and you see birds in the sky quite often. Is this earth an earth of abundance, or is this earth an earth of lack? And if it's an earth of abundance, is there an abundance of healing or a lack of healing? And so sometimes it's that attitude shift that can help us to really get empowered when we're facing something that maybe at a different time in our life would have been a little bit scary. The next thing I want to share, and I love this, is the power of yes. I have been a writer for 20, 30 years. I've written training manuals, online help, my own book. I edit and I help others write and publish their own books. And I've also written for newspapers. And one of the articles that I wrote for a newspaper that was called Pinellas Reader was by Allison J.K. And what she shared is the power of yes. And she said it's not just thinking about positive thinking. There's an actual science about what our beliefs are doing in our system. And I'll share this with you because I think it's so powerful. Our bodies are approximately 80% water and 20% muscles. So when we say yes, our muscles expand. And when we say no, our muscles contract. So there's either an expansion or a contraction. An expansion or a contraction. An expansion or a contraction at a cellular level within our body that also matches us energetically, muscularly, and in the water levels in our body. So if we focus on and say to ourselves, I don't have enough time for that, I don't have enough energy, I don't have enough money, our muscles contract, they tighten up, and we act it out, bringing to us a lack of these things because our body believes that. And our muscles have contracted to match that. But if we say to ourselves, you know what, the money's going to come, the time's going to come, the energy's going to come, it's going to work, I'm not sure how it's going to work. Our bodies react differently at a cellular level. There's more expansiveness, energetically, water level, muscular level, cellular level. And so it's really important what we say to ourselves. And this is where Positive Prime comes in for me. I was so fortunate earlier this year to discover Positive Prime. And Kim, I think I've shared this story with you. I don't know that I've shared it with everybody, but I was going through my 5th surgery in 3 years because of the breast cancer. And I overcame most of them pretty easily, pretty good attitude. But the last one just really wiped me out. And I was feeling, I might call it depression for the first time in my life. And I was sitting here kind of battling and talking to God or the universe or the angels, but in my mind, I'm talking to God. And I'm like, I need to be able to rebuild my serotonin naturally. I teach people how to rebuild their immune system naturally. How can I change the chemicals in my brain naturally? And I was like, my gosh, that's what I need to learn. I need to teach that too. And within 1 week, Positive Prime came into my world. And so what if there was a way to improve your mood, your attitude, your focus, your pain tolerance, and your health based on neuroscience? What if it only took 3 minutes a day? Would you be willing to try it? And if so, I'd love you to go to positiveprime.com and use the referral code BeHealthy. Now, what if you could even improve your own results? What if you could personalize it? What if you could add pictures of your family, your goals, your happy places, your personal affirmations? What if you could do that for only $10 or $20 a month? Imagine how much more powerful it could be in aligning with your personal journey. Would that be something you'd like to explore? I can help you with that if you're interested. And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go ahead and share my Positive Prime session. Let's see. So let's see if I can figure this little baby out here. Safari. I had it open at one point. Let's try this here. And I don't need, let's see here. Watch, I had it open and now is it gonna play with me? There it is, yay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna kind of talk over a little bit of it, but my series on Naturally Recharge is how to naturally rebuild your, energy, how to naturally rebuild your immune system. And I'll let it kind of start with the sound maybe. Let's see. Is there any questions while we're waiting on this? I'm gonna okay. Whoops. All right, I'm trying to make it bigger and it decided to go smaller on me.
You're a sweetheart. Right. I think that you actually need to make the whole screen for Safari bigger. Yay, push the green one just as you're about to. Oh, sorry.
It's all good. All right, yay, 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 yay. And so some of the things that I incorporated into this session, and they're still tweaking some of the pictures that are not showing up, but some of the things that I incorporated into this session is deep breathing. So one of the things, cancer and other diseases do not like oxygen. So if you can do deep breathing and get oxygen into the cells, that can help your body to be more powerful and more healthy. And so if you can deep breathe 15, 20 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a day, that's really a powerful tool in rebuilding your energy and in rebuilding your health. Another thing that cancer does not like, and other diseases as well, is sugar. And so like a cancer cell is 10 times more likely to grab sugar than another cell. So really eating good nutrition is really important. And so I try to incorporate some of the foods in here. Definitely your attitude and your relationships and your connection and your joy. Another thing is inflammation. So inflammation, the body, disease loves inflammation. So if you can reduce your inflammation, that's another thing that can help to increase your immune system. Your body, they say about 80 to 90% of disease happens in an acidic body. So probably only about 5% of disease is hereditary, according to a lot of different studies that I've read in the natural health area. So a lot of times people will say, oh, well, you know, my parents had high cholesterol, blood pressure, cardiac, cancer, etc. But if you can get your body alkalinized instead of acidic, that can really help to clean up the environment within your body. And so one of the ways to do that is a lot of the green foods. I learned about a product called Purium about 6 years ago. I love it. I've used it. It helped me with my own cancer journey. It helped me to lose 60 pounds during menopause without exercising. I loved it. But basically getting really clean ingredients in your body, and the greens, which are more alkalinizing. And then the other thing, I try to teach a lot of things that people can do that are really cheap or free, because I know sometimes when you're faced with a disease, it's really hard to know what to throw your money and energy at and what not to. So there's something called earthing or grounding, where, and you can look this up on YouTube, but if you can put your feet, bare feet on the ground, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour and a half, the electrical energy from the earth can kind of balance the electrical energy in your body. And so that's also a really, really nice feature. And I think what we'll do is we'll go back to finishing up the PowerPoint, and then I'll be open to taking any questions. And I think, let's see, we were here. And so if I go back to what if, like the quality of the questions is so important that we ask ourselves, what if there was really no such thing as dis-ease? What if there was really nothing wrong? What if dis-ease was man-made? What if you really had the power to heal? If you only knew what to do, if you only understood how powerful your body is. What if you already had the knowledge, you just haven't yet tapped into it? What if you learned to listen to your body and talk to your body more effectively? I'm a firm believer, like when I went through my cancer, and probably even the chronic fatigue Epstein-Barr, I did with my cancer, I did a 21-day prayer and fast. I had 4 or 5 friends do it with me, and every single day I had 1 to 3 pieces of information, a new natural product, a person that popped into my life and was able to help me with my journey. It was the most, even 2 to 3 months prior to my diagnosis, before I ever knew there was a problem, there were things coming into my life as far as how to naturally deal with breast cancer. I just figured I would use that to teach others. I never thought I'd need it for myself. So when we can get really tuned in to that connection with spirit, I think that there's a lot of answers that we know within us that we just haven't learned how to trust or really hear our voice yet. And I think that's one of the things I really want to encourage people to know, is that our bodies talk to us. We just have to learn to listen. We have to slow down enough to listen. One of the sayings that I love is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. And another thing I love with Leonardo da Vinci is nature never breaks her own laws. So what if you learn to listen to your body and talk to your body more effectively? Is that a true testimony of self-love, self-care, and selflessness to allow yourself to heal? What if your body's already telling you the information that you need? So I do believe that we have a secret plan. We have a secret weapon. We already have it. We already own it. We've built our house around it. We have built our life around it. And I'm going to remind you the amazing gift you have that you already own, and that is your own body. And so I'd like to close in saying that I believe learning to harness the healing power within you is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your future self, your employees, or your loved ones.
Yay! Clap, 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 clap.
I'm going to second that. Yay! That was awesome and beautiful. Absolutely fantastic, Betty. Really? Yay, Patty's saying fantastic as well. I love every aspect of the entire message that you share. I totally, completely am in alignment with it. I believe it. The audience needs to know that I actually didn't know what you were going to say. I have had a few conversations with you, and I just typed in the chat that it seems to me remarkable. And the synergy, the synchronicity, the serendipity. Betty, you have to come to Serafini Mindstar here at Nautilus Estate. Like, what's the likelihood that Cameron and I would live in a house where the architect adhered to the mathematical formula that is the Fibonacci, so that it actually has the golden ratio? That is our house.
Wow.
Right? You couldn't have known that.
Wow.
Whoa.
Miracles happen here. And I believe that miracles happen here for that reason. And I also think because love and gratitude is anchored into this energy, right? And what's fascinating is that yesterday, and only yesterday, when I actually did the virtual retreat program live for the group of people at the spa and golf resort, I guided them through a much longer meditative mindfulness, creative visualization process. You, of course, can watch the video for it, but it was literally about sending incredible appreciation, this feeling of being so fortunate and blessed that if you talk to your body the right way, it will heal itself. You just have to allow it and love it enough so that it does it. And here you are reinforcing that message again today. Betty, you know what I love also about the way that you present this is that you're extremely relatable too. You're down to earth. It's real. You come from your heart. And I know for a fact that in my 20 years in the spa industry, I, of course, learned a lot about reflexology and traditional Chinese medicine and qi and Reiki and so forth. And everything you say about the way that the ears, the way that the feet, the way that the eyes correspond. Like you're speaking, it's like a beautiful song, an orchestral creation. So I'm really excited to be sharing your message and your session. It's really important in this day and age, and I love it, 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 love it. Thank you so much for actually birthing all of this and being of service and living this purpose in your lifetime.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and the connection with all of you. And some of you I've gotten to know through these calls, and some of you I'll get to know better over time. So I just really appreciate, Kim, that you live your truth so that we, you know, like all of us showed up here not by accident, you know, like we're all in this together at this time with each other for a purpose that we're yet to discover. And I think it's really beautiful and exciting. You know, and I got to share something I didn't share in the presentation that I think is fascinating. I met a doctor that is a medical doctor from China. He grew up in China. His father and his grandfather were both doctors, and I talk about this in the book and in my program, but he lives here in the States now, and he's got some natural products that have really helped people in tremendous ways. But the thing that was fascinating about me is that in China years ago, the male doctors could not touch the females. So they learned to read the face. So he teaches doctors and people to look at a fingernail, a tongue, the face reading, to learn how to see what's going on in the body, because in their culture, they weren't allowed to touch the opposite sex. And I just think that's like, there's so much ancient knowledge that we don't know about that you know, that's my goal, my purpose, my heart is to teach people how to do the blended approach. With my cancer, I did the blended approach. And then Kim knows, but the rest of you don't. Maybe Sherry knows that I went through an autoimmune disease about 2 months ago. And it was like a Guillain-Barré, but luckily it was recoverable pretty quickly. But it was a virus that landed in my nervous system, and it was autoimmune. And so I was able to apply a lot of the principles, and I figured learn more, you know, here's another part of my story. And so I think as I continue to evolve, it just seems like the message continues to be teaching people how to rebuild the immune system and the autoimmune, because to me, anything that's going on in our bodies is going to make our bodies weaker to be able to invite disease. And what we want to do is strengthen our bodies so disease isn't really welcome here.
So
yeah, and your approach is perfect. Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Audrey.
I was going to ask you, I thought those questions that you asked your body, what are you here to teach me, with the cancer and probably with the Guillain-Barré, what was the answer for you? I'm just curious, you know, if you are willing to share.
Absolutely. I'm pretty much of an open book. I think for me, cancer was a teacher. I think when I went through my chronic fatigue many years ago, somebody came into my life that told me to start talking to the disease and asking why it was here. And I'm thinking, why, you're crazy. There's no reason this disease is here. You're nuts, you know, but I was desperate to get better, and the doctors didn't have any answers. So I played along, but I was really kind of PO'd at this guy for mentioning that because I thought he was way wrong. And so when the cancer came into my life, it was a much easier discussion. So for me, cancer was a teacher. Cancer helped me to slow down. Cancer helped me to reprioritize. Cancer helped me, this sounds really crazy and horrible, but it taught me that I was really loved a lot more than I realized. It taught me that I had a lot more support than I realized. There were other things. Those are the things that are coming to the top of my mind right now.
Audrey, thank you, because do you know, that was a gem that Betty just explained there. And I would like to encourage every single person who is watching this video or sharing it to actually go through a beautiful ritual. And I love that you're doing this, Betty. I was actually only talking about it the other day. So there's a lot of teaching about random acts of kindness, right? Where you do something for somebody else without any expectation of anything in return whatsoever. And a lot of people do that, but actually they still have an attachment to wanting to be appreciated for it, wanting the recognition, wanting the reward. It's like the giver's high. And I actually like to flip that, and I certainly do this, and maybe you already do this in your program. I ask people to actually write down who supports them and how they're supported. Because I think that if you went around for an entire week or month, even better, and you noticed how many people give you some help completely without you asking for it, you would realize there is so much more assistance in your life than you can possibly fathom. Because I actually do believe, Betty, the majority of the Western world actually runs around with that belief that I'm alone, I'm on my own, I have to do this myself. I think it was very much a part of the human development movement 20, 30 years ago. If it's going to be, it's up to me. And that's just not even close to the truth, right?
That was my mom's saying.
Right. And so you actually internalize that without even knowing. And I know people who cannot ask for help because they think that they're going to have to reciprocate. And they actually then feel really mean because they can't be bothered and they're too lazy. And actually they've got a pretty mean heart and they're not very generous. And so they don't want to get into the situation where somebody actually provides them some support, because heavens, they might have to actually offer somebody else some support or pay it forward, right?
And that's really, to me, it's paying it forward. Like if Audrey does something to me, well, it may work that I can do something back, but the way that my brain and my heart work is, thank you, Audrey, thank you so much. And then when somebody else comes into my world, how can I do something for them? Because maybe I'm in a different spot, heart-wise, energy-wise, mind-wise, health-wise, that maybe I couldn't reciprocate to Audrey. Maybe she did something just out of the goodness of her heart, but maybe now I can pay it forward to somebody else.
See, such a powerful message. And see this conversation, Audrey, that you actually have now inspired, right? This deliciousness, this is just like the nectar, isn't it?
It was one of the most powerful lessons I learned after my heart attack, was the power of receiving, because I was always a giver, because, you know, I'm a fortress. I am the one who has the generosity and all of this. And I had the nicest thing happen to me, where a church that I did not know, I was not a member of, I was nominated to receive a quilt for heart attack survivors.
Wow.
And at the end of the service, every parishioner tied a knot in the quilt and said a prayer for me. And I was bawling. I was like crying all day long. And I just was overwhelmed and I'm still kind of choked up about it, but it was just amazing. And I thought, this is what I had to learn. This was one of the most important things I had to learn.
I'm going to take that and try to figure out how to do that with my friend Karen that's going through the cancer. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's funny because in the students that I teach, I told them that, you know, my dearest friend was going through this, and I gave them the choice to write cards or work on a project, and half of them wrote cards, and I brought them to her in the hospital, and like just tears, you know, and you could just see the appreciation and the feeling of feeling loved by these kids that don't even know her, and the depth of their sentiment.
Yeah.
People are so good. We just don't give them the opportunity to shine so often.
Right. And now what I've learned is just to say thank you and receive it. Like, I would brush off compliments or just say, oh, what can I do for you? And now I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I had to learn a really hard way, but it sunk in.
I love that. I love that. And do you know what, Audrey? I think it's very, very difficult for the majority of people.
I think
right?
so.
We don't learn how to be gracious in receiving. It's not something that is taught in our schools. It's not something that's taught in lots of other programs, but it is so extraordinarily necessary.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I learned it through my first illness.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to share one other thing is there's a series called The Truth About Cancer, and I've watched the docu-series. They've got 3 different programs out, but the one where they went through Asia, one of the doctors shared, I don't know if I've got this exactly right, but I think it's so powerful. And he's like, when there's people that have no money, that are not able, you know, to spend a lot of money on remedies, it's like he teaches them just a simple, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I love you, I think is what it is.
Ho'oponopono. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a lot that can be done. We don't know so much of it because we haven't needed to know it. And I don't think we learn it until we need to know it.
Yeah.
That's so true. And yes, Audrey, it is Ho'oponopono. And it's a Hawaiian prayer. It's an amazing story, actually. And Joe Vitale does a lot of teaching about that. Betty, thank you for all that you offer. I'm off to watch your beautiful session. What's it called again? Remind everyone.
Charged.
Naturally.
Is the album ready?
It's just about ready. I think that Naomi was hoping it would be ready by tonight, but I would hope sometime this week. There's still a few picture links that are needing to get fixed.
Fantastic. All right. Much love to everyone here. Thank you so much. And please, as soon as you see this video, share it with somebody else you care about. There will be a gem in there that will be invaluable, totally, completely gifted, a precious gem to them.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you so much.